So last weekend, Friday, I travelled to Germany to sit in complete silence for about an hour and a half with a very profound teacher, and we didn't exchange any words. No one did at all. It's completely silent, but I feel very transformed having gone to this, and I'm going to explain a bit about what I did and what it entailed. And if it's something that appeals to you, perhaps you can have a look at this as well. But on Friday, I travelled over to Germany to visit a lady known as Mother Meera, who is considered by many to be a divine avatar. But an avatar is basically a direct incarnation of the divine in human form. And the purpose of an avatar is to help other human beings to ascend to higher levels of consciousness, all human beings and all life forms, in fact, to ascend to higher levels of consciousness. Now, you might listen to this and think, well, aren't we all embodiments of the divine? We are. The difference is that we're raveled up in and consumed by and identified with the human being, the small self, the ego, the identity. All of us, we're all attached to the identity. Even if on some level or even a deep level we understand that we're the divine in a human form, we're not identified with that. We're identified with the personality, the human. We might remember for a few minutes or a few moments, or we might have experiences in meditation which enable us to experience more deeply our oneness with the divine. But primarily we're identified with and experiencing life as a human being. An avatar is very different in that an avatar at all times is identified with the divine, identifies with the divine, and is at all times aware of and has at its disposal divine consciousness. It's always at divine consciousness, an avatar. So an avatar is not an alien. An avatar is a human being, but it is the form is really an illusion. They are quite literally the divine. The human form is just so that we can interact with them. So Mother Meera is considered an avatar, and as I've expressed before, I've been under the guidance of an avatar in the UK, which they have chosen to remain unidentified, unknown publicly. So many people will say, "Who's your teacher?" I can't tell you. I would love to be able to tell you, trust me, but I can't express who they are because they don't want to be known. It's not their wish at this time to be known. But I've been under their guidance for 25 years or so it's not something that's just new. Many people say, "Are you sure you're not being conned?" Well, I've never paid a penny to this person. They've only ever given me freely knowledge and wisdom, and I've seen my life transform over these years, and I've got quite literally hundreds of stories of miracles and what we would consider to be miracles and amazing stories and things like that. I won't go into that, but anyway, I travelled to Germany and flew into Frankfurt from the UK, and then I hired a car and drove from Frankfurt over to a town or an area called Limburg. And just outside of Limburg, there's a village called Boldenstein, which is where Mother Meera is based. Now, Mother Meera flicks around the world. She has an ashram in India, and I believe she does visit other areas in Europe as well. I think she was in the Netherlands not so long ago, and I know that she does move around a bit, but her primary home, her primary base is in Germany, in Boldenstein, where she's got a house. And there are volunteers that live in the house and help her manage all of this. Everyone is volunteers. She runs off of donations, as far as I understand. She doesn't take money for the process that I'm about to explain to you today. So it's all free. It's all beautiful. And she's been doing this for what she calls darshan for like 40 years or more, as far as I understand. I think she's 65, so she's been doing this a hell of a long time and totally for free. And she's doing unbelievable, absolutely amazing work. So travelled over to her. And by the way, I have been to see Mother Meera about 4 or 5 times before, but just never in Germany. And what I have noticed is that every time I go to see her and have these completely silent experiences, these darshans, which I'll explain to you in a moment, the effects of these don't tend to manifest immediately for me, not there and then. I will have a very, very deep experience normally when I'm there, but I don't feel the effects immediately of the process that she does, which I will explain. In fact, I'll explain that first and it will make more sense about that part of it. So when you go to see Mother Meera, there are chairs either side. There's like rows of chairs, and I counted roughly as to how many people were there, and it's about 200 in this meditation hall. So you sit on a chair, everything is in silence, and her way of teaching is purely in silence. And as she puts it, that she says that we're all very busy and we all want teachings and lectures and lessons, and she gives us silence because that's what we really need. She says that in order for the mind to flourish, it needs to go beyond what it knows. And so her way, her teaching is purely in silence. That's just her choice. Many other teachers will teach in different ways, and that's their choice as well. I suppose different people will be drawn to different ways of teaching or different teachers, and the effects of which will probably be different as well. This is just her personal way. So you sit down, and Mother Meera will eventually walk in after, however long, depends when you sit down, but generally like 10 minutes or so. Mother Meera will appear, everyone stands up. Mother Meera walks down the center and sits on a very humble stage. It's not very grand or anything, it's just a little platform. She sits there on a chair, all in silence. And then she'll sit down and she does daily YouTube meditations that are all silent blessings. So she does that on camera and we meditate with her. And then at some point that ends, and the helpers, of which there are many, will call people up line by line to cue down the center and then work their way up basically to where Mother Meera is sitting. And you will kneel down in front of Mother Meera. And if you want to, you can place your hands on her feet. You don't need to. There's no requirement to do that. But a lot of her devotees will, and I did. Place your hands on her feet. She has got socks on, if anyone was wondering. And a sari kind of covers her feet, so it's not as strange as you may think. And you kneel down with your head close to her lap so that she can do what is known as Pranam. So she places her fingers on your forehead and around your temple area. And within a few seconds, she's doing all this work. So as she places her hands on your forehead, as she puts it, there are two extremely thin lines which we're not aware of physically that run up from the feet and towards the top of the head. I believe they meet in the middle and then finish towards the top of the head. She says that these lines represent each soul, the soul's development. So the spiritual development of the soul will account for how far up these lines have worked their way. And as they work their way up, they have the potential to become knotted or become, knotted is how she puts it. She says that when she does pranam, she's actually untying the knots that happen along that line. Now, this is very hard for us human beings to kind of comprehend and understand as to exactly what she's doing, but this is how she puts it. And I presume that these lines represent, or when they become knotted, it's related to traumas, mental blocks, challenges that we've faced, maybe emotions that are dominating us, things of that nature. This is just my understanding, but I would imagine it's related to those types of things. And the line becomes knotted, and when she does pranam, she's untying these knots for us very gently. And I'm told by my teacher, only an avatar can do that work. So she does that. That probably lasts about 5 seconds or so, 5 to 10 seconds maximum. Then when she takes her hands off of your head, you look up into her eyes, and this is where she does what is known as darshan. The whole process generally darshan is an umbrella term for the whole process, but in reality they're split up into pranam, which is that process with the fingers on the forehead, and then darshan after, which means to look a deity in the eye, look an incarnation of God in the eye. So you look up into her eyes, and she immediately is aware of exactly who you are on a very soul level, and she puts Paramatman light into every corner of your being, every aspect, every sheath. She fills you with light. And this, in a very simplistic way of describing it, because truthfully, I don't fully understand this myself, I think it's impossible for a human being to fully understand it, is that this elevates our level of consciousness. This enables us to rapidly continue growing spiritually. And my teacher says this normally will shave off a massive chunk of our progress. So the progress that we would have made on our own, perhaps 6 months, we would have jumped forward 6 months by doing this process with Mother Meera. Just as an example, it's not that exact, but we make big progress, basically. Now, as she's doing this, some people will see and feel things, but a vast majority of people will not notice a thing, other than the fact that you're in a deeply peaceful and quiet environment, so you feel very relaxed normally. Although if it's your first time, you might be a bit anxious about the whole thing. But generally speaking, I think a lot of people feel deeply relaxed and comfortable. And you won't, as I say, often people won't feel or notice anything, and that's quite normal. After this process, you then go back to your seat. That whole process there, placing the hands on the forehead and looking into your eyes, probably lasts 10 to 15 seconds as a guess. It will vary from person to person by a few seconds here and there, maybe 5 seconds difference, but generally it's roughly the same. And then you'll go and sit back down and you'll meditate for the rest of the darshan until everyone has had their turn. Everyone queues up row by row. And then eventually you will sit back down, meditate until everyone's finished, and then that will be roughly the end of the process. And that entire process is about an hour and a half-ish. She works through 200 people in that time. And many people struggle to understand this because from a Western perspective, to put your hands on the feet of a person or to look up to a person as if they're special or especially godlike is unheard of. It's pathetic almost from a Western point of view. I don't feel like this. I've fortunately been surrounded by people who have kind of explained it to me and given me more of a deeper understanding. In the Eastern cultures, especially Hinduism, this is the norm. But in Western cultures, you're considered almost stupid if you look up to someone like that. But it's really a lack of understanding that you're not looking up to another human being. You're looking up to a divine avatar, which is an incarnation of God, effectively, which is a huge statement. I understand that. It's a huge thing to wrap your head around, and I don't really expect everyone to wrap their head around it. I feel like perhaps you have to be under the influence of one of these people or around them long enough to kind of comprehend it. It's difficult to know, but I kind of have been fortunate enough to be able to overcome that, having spent 25 years under the guidance of one. I know how they operate a bit more. I've seen directly the amazing ways that they work, the mystical ways that they work, and the effects on me. So I'm in a sort of very fortunate position in that regard. But I do understand that for those of you who haven't had that kind of influence, it's very hard to accept that someone is that profound. So I would encourage you, if you feel called, to go and visit her and see how you feel. I mean, I have no doubt that there'll be people that do go and visit her that don't understand it and think, well, she's doing nothing. I've come all the way to Germany to sit in front of someone for half an hour. I've had to kneel down the centre of the rows of people and crawl down there like some sort of peasant. Kneeled in front of her. She said nothing. She's not smiled at me. What's the point? And I understand that. If you've had that experience, I totally understand it. It is. I would suggest it is just purely a lack of understanding and knowledge. The explanation hasn't been there for you to understand what she's actually doing and why she's doing it. And there's a big amount of acceptance that's needed to accept that what she's doing is right and that what she's doing is deeply transformative. And I think that if you do go in with those kind of thoughts of like, what's all this about? Why is she not talking? Why is she not smiling? I've just come all the way here and all we've done is sat in silence. I've had to kneel down in front of her. These are all the mental blocks that actually make the work that she's trying to do more difficult, I think, because she says in her own words, the best approach, the way that this will help you the best is if you just open. If you are as empty as you can be. Don't try and move energy around. Don't try and do anything. Just try to be open and empty mentally. And I think, understandably, especially Westerners, many struggle with that because the whole process is very foreign to us. But the reason that it's quite normalized to put your hands on the feet of an avatar or a extremely advanced teacher, but generally an avatar, is a sign of humility. You have to overcome your own ego to do that. There's a part of you, part of all of us, that is repulsed by that, that thinks I'm not some sort of peasant that's going to put my hands on the feet of another person. You know, we're all equal. We are all equal, but it takes a massive amount of humility, and it requires us to overcome our own ego in order to say thank you and just do it. It's a sign of humility, a sign of gratitude. No more than that. But as Westerners, easily create big mental blocks around doing this. And as I've mentioned at the start, it's not something you need to do. Some people just do it because they feel like they want to. You don't have to put your hands on her feet at all. She doesn't ask that. And equally, some people that do go to darshan that have got an injury or can't kneel down or whatever, they're allowed to go up and just sit on a chair in front of her. It's more for simplicity, so that she can actually just quite smoothly touch your head without it being a big drama, without it being a longer winded process. So a lot of it is simplicity, but I do believe that weaved in with it is this process that requires all of us to overcome our own ego, kneeling down, sitting before her, all of that type of thing. The ego hates all of that because the ego wants to feel elevated. So it does require us to overcome that, which is a big thing, especially for those of us who are spiritual seekers. So I started to see a lot of synchronicities, and I'll try and put these on the screen if I get time to edit this video more thoroughly than normal. I started to see a lot of synchronicities. I've noticed that I get little signs, and sometimes the signs are different, but I started to notice a pattern where I was seeing rainbows, not up in the sky as normal, but just like from the light that's been reflected or refracted or whatever in a certain direction, and it's created like a strip of a rainbow strip, I've been calling it. So actually just here, when we were renovating this house, I took this old radiator off and put this new one on. But before I put the new one on, when I took the old radiator off, a pile of oracle cards, we bought this house in June, fell. They were stashed behind the old radiator and they fell down on the floor. And right next to it was this hilarious strip, rainbow strip, and I'll put a picture on screen so you can see it. And I thought, how funny is that? I've found this kind of these spiritual cards, whether they're of any meaning or whatever, I'm not that bothered. And then there's this rainbow strip. It felt connected somehow. My flat is also flat 11, which is quite a spiritual number, quite a profound number in numerology. And then on the way to, so that was a while ago, but I just it was in the back of my mind. It wasn't in the back of my mind, actually. That's part of the amazing truth of the synchronicities. It wasn't in the back of my mind, but it came to the forefront once I started to see these other synchronicities that I'm going to explain. So when we were flying over from Heathrow to Frankfurt, we're starting to descend, and we'd sort of come through the clouds. We'd gone all the way along, and then as we were descending into Frankfurt, we were just coming towards this layer of cloud. And I looked out the window and saw the shadow of the aeroplane, our aeroplane, and I'll put this photo over the screen as well. There was a rainbow ring around the aeroplane. And I looked and I thought, in my mind, I thought my eyes must be playing tricks on me because I've never seen that before. I rubbed my eyes and I could still see it. And then I thought, well, I'm going to take a photo. So I got my phone out and I took a photo. And what you're looking at now is the photo of this image. And to me, it felt like a connection. It felt like Mother Meera was sort of welcoming me or saying, I'm with you, looking forward to seeing you in a way. It's like a gentle sort of reminder, prompt, I'm with you, I'm there, what you're doing is good, that type of thing. And I thought amazing, and then I sort of left it, didn't really think much of it. When on the first day, the toilets are sort of underground. So I went downstairs to use the toilet, used the bathroom, went to wash my hands, and just by the sink there's a bin on the floor. And there was another rainbow strip on top of this bin. I couldn't work out how it had appeared because there's barely any lighting in this room. There were lights, but there was no sunlight, and it was dark outside. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but it was just unusual. And I saw this strip of a rainbow strip again on this bin, which I'll put on screen for you. So to me, it was another little sign. This was right before the darshan was about to start. Had a beautiful darshan on the first day. second day, so that was the Saturday, and then on the Sunday, I went again, and two of my amazing students from my online school also joined me this time. They also joined on the Saturday. We went to the darshan on Sunday, so it was 2 back-to-back meditations. And on the Sunday, when we went through the process, which was amazing, I saw an aura, about 6 inches of white, goldeny coloured aura all around Mother Meera, which was a first for me. And I have been to see her 5 times, I think, over the last sort of 10 or 15 years. So this gorgeous aura all the way around her. So that was really really nice, really a nice touch. Had an amazing darshan again, a beautiful meditation, very deep. And that was it then. After that, I was returning home. And as I mentioned earlier, you don't always feel the effects of the darshan immediately. I would say I did this time. I did feel the effects immediately, but I have been in previous years and not necessarily noticed much. This time I did feel lighter. Is probably the best way I could describe it. I felt purer, I felt lighter, I felt clearer. I didn't feel heavy or, blocked or whatever before. I felt perfectly good before. I felt in a very good place actually, but I feel now even in a better place. I feel like I've cleared out something. I feel like I've purified myself more. I've transformed inwardly. And it's subtle, but I'm noticing it, and I can feel it in different ways. And two of my students who I mentioned also joined, both on the Saturday and one on the Sunday, and that was an amazing experience for me to get to see two of my students from my school having darshan. That was really special. And both of them have said similar things, that they feel more connected to the divine, or they feel lighter in themselves. They've definitely noticed a change after having visited Mother Meera. So that was the experience, and I know I've sort of skimmed over a lot of it because I don't want to bore you with some of the just mundane details, but it was an amazing experience, and I would highly recommend, if you feel called to go and see her, to go and visit her. It's totally free. She does come to the UK sometimes, but you do have to obviously sort of fork out the expense of flying to Germany, staying in a hotel or a guest house or whatever. So there is expense involved, but to see her herself is free and very valuable. Obviously, to see the divine in human form is money can't, you can't put a price on that. And then when I got home on the Monday, I literally was about to go to bed. I had a glass of water on the side, and I happened to just look over the top of the water as I was about to pick it up, and directly down, the way that my lampshade had reflected the light, it looked exactly like an eye. And I'll put a picture of this over the screen. It was like an eye was looking at me. And again, it was just like a final little gesture of like, I'm with you, I'm watching you, you're doing well, that type of thing. I felt comforted by it. I felt like I've got someone that's sort of watching over me, and it felt like a nice way to close the weekend. It was beautiful. And there'll be many people that will listen to this and hear me talking about the synchronicities and say, oh, it's confirmation bias, or it's just chance, or it's just this, it's just that. It may well be the case, but for me, it felt more. It felt like a sign. It felt like a gentle encouragement, and almost like a hand on your shoulder, like I'm with you, you're on the right track, that type of thing. So it felt nice to me. But I wanted to share this experience with you. I wanted to share my time with Mother Meera with you. Just making sure I had my mic on. Then I thought, God, I've actually filmed this whole video without my mic. Fortunately, it's there. I wanted to share it with you. I would encourage you to see her if you feel called, and if not, then that's also absolutely fine. I'll keep putting out videos that are totally sort of, I suppose, relevant to some of the things she shares, but in my own way. And maybe that appeals to some of you a bit more, so that's cool as well. If you want to learn more about meditation, if you want to have closer guidance and be part of an amazing community of truly earnest spiritual seekers that are actually putting in the work and want to learn and want to grow, I'll put a link to my online school down in the description. You're welcome to join us, but failing that, I'll see you on the next video. Thanks a lot.